What up guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Rob, and in this video I want to speak about my 17-year journey in fitness and how I was able to stay consistent throughout. My hopes in this video is to share with you very valuable tips and tricks that you can utilize in your own fitness journey to stay consistent through the obstacles, because there's always ups and downs and ebbs and flows, but the key is to stay consistent through the turbulence, and that's how you see success. So I want to start off by just giving you a brief introduction of why I started to get into fitness. And this is going to be different for everybody. For you it might be one thing, for me it was another. Straight up, I just wanted to be jacked. I know how ridiculous that sounds, but when you're a young 15-year-old kid and you're looking up to guys like Arnold and Stallone and your favorite wrestler, if you watched the WWF back in the day, I just wanted to be in shape. I associated that with strength and superiority and masculinity, and that's what I wanted to achieve for myself in my own way. So in utilizing all these other figures that I would see in my life as inspiration, I started to train. But it wasn't always easy. I didn't always know what I was doing. I did do many things wrong, and my goal here is to kind of give you my story, work you through all of my fuck-ups, to finally finding my way and finding my rhythm, and then building a pretty decent physique for myself that I can now sustain indefinitely for the rest of my life. So here we go. When I was 19 years old, I finally made a decision that I was ready to start actually training. I had a job at a retail store in the city here in New York, and nighttime I started going to the gym. And I went to the gym with one of my best friends for several years. We were partners. We both started at the same time. And it's safe to say in the beginning it was kind of strange in the sense that we didn't know what we were doing. But what helped us was that we started training in this penitentiary style gym, Powerhouse Gym in the Bronx, which is literally where I learned everything that I know. And it was one of those places that even if the most beautiful woman walked in there, the most beautiful women, the guys, and the gym was primarily inhabited by guys that took their training very seriously, they didn't even notice them. That was the atmosphere in that gym. It was so serious and focused on results and on getting better, and on every single time they walk in, walking out a little bit better than they got there earlier. And that's pretty much what training is about. So anyway, luckily for me, the part where I actually wanted to train, where I was actually driven to work out, was high. I didn't have to force myself. And I know there are people out there that don't really like to train. They're not really into it. They look at it as a chore. And there are reasons for that. But me, from the beginning, I just wanted to get into shape. I was really fascinated and pretty much obsessed with the idea of wanting to be fit. And I'll be honest with you, my friends and I, we had a picture on our wall. We all had the same picture. If you look back many years and you remember Marky Mark, right? When he had those white Calvin Klein underwears, and it was that pose in black and white up against probably a backdrop. That was our goal. All of us had that same goal. We all wanted that. And needless to say, we all greatly surpassed that in not too much time after that. But when you don't have something and you really have no idea what your potential is, you find inspiration in things that were your standard at the moment, but these things change as you progress. So anyway, that was our goal. We all wanted to look like Marky Mark. And we had the lifting part down. We were amped to get into the gym. We wanted to train, we wanted to lift. But there were other parts of the process that we didn't have down. Parts having to do with eating and diet and all that other stuff. And let me stop for a second, because diet, it's frowned upon, the word in general, because it's viewed as sacrifice, and it's viewed as deprivation, and it's viewed as I need to take away from what I normally do, but it's not. The right way to frame that word is to look at it as it's the quality of the way that you eat. Your diet is the quality of how you eat, not taking away from what you normally eat, or not sacrificing what you normally eat, or not depriving yourself of. It's just the quality. And it takes some time for you to learn that, because initially you're going to look at the word diet and you're going to think that everything is just about you sacrificing, but it's not. So with that being said, we weren't consistent. We didn't have that down. We were eating a lot of trashy food. And when you're younger, like really young, truthfully, you can kind of get away with that. But it's definitely not the way you should be doing things. Definitely not. And I think this is common sense. So our goal, we wanted to put on muscle, we wanted to get leaner, we wanted to look good, we wanted to be aesthetic, we wanted to feel superior, we wanted to be attractive to women. This is what our driving force was. So it's safe to say in the beginning, we did almost everything wrong in terms of how we ate, how much we ate. We didn't understand energy expenditure, we didn't understand calories, we didn't understand how to calculate calories, we didn't understand the importance of protein and ratios and getting in enough protein on a daily basis. We didn't understand training in regards to how much volume is the correct amount of volume. We didn't understand much, but we did like what we did. We did like what we were doing. So that was a big plus. And I would say, personally, in my opinion, in my case, the first several years of my training, probably the first 5 years, I did almost everything wrong with my diet. I did almost everything wrong with my recovery. I trained too much. I recovered too little. My diet was not of the quality it should have been. It was a lot of shit food. I would like to go to the gym and then head to the diner and have a bunch of chicken fingers. And now I have not eaten that shit in like more than 12 years. I'll never eat it again. But that's what I liked to do because I wasn't yet ready to educate myself on the benefits having a higher quality diet would bring me. So there's that. So I did everything wrong for the first 5 years. But then there was a turning point. The turning point was when I was scouted at my job to model. That's really what changed everything for me, because I was one of those guys that, I'm 6 feet tall, actual 6 feet without shoes. And I was just kind of big, and I was just like a blob. I was like 205 pounds and I was just a blob. But even if you really don't do a lot right and all you do right is the lifting part and the intensity part from the beginning stages, you will put on muscle, 100%. And luckily for me, I had the training part down, for the most part anyway. So I did put on a lot of muscle, you just couldn't see it. So when I was scouted, I was like, oh shit, I gotta get myself in shape. So I finally started dieting. And again, I looked at this as deprivation, and I did it all wrong, and I didn't know what I was doing. I looked at it as just needing to eat clean and eat less. That's how I saw it. I didn't see it as I have to get in 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. I didn't see it as I need to calculate my calorie deficit and get my total daily energy expenditure. I didn't know anything about any of this. I just said I need to eat less and I need to eat clean. So I did it all wrong, but I lost weight because I clearly was in a calorie deficit. And 20 pounds later, I found myself around 180, and I could see myself. I could see my abs, and my shoulders were a little more capped. And I had some striations in my bicep. I started to see things that I never saw before, and I liked it. And that was the pivot. That was the turning point for me. That's when I started to realize that quality was more important than quantity. How you look, how I looked, contributed to the way I felt, and how I felt contributed to my livelihood because I was booking jobs. Like the modeling thing really changed my life. So that was the turning point for me. That was also the turning point in my training and in the education I was willing to provide myself with. I wanted to learn more about diet. I wanted to learn more about eating well. I wanted to learn more about macronutrients. I wanted to learn more about how I can improve upon the way that I looked now that I cut down enough to see myself. You don't want to walk around looking like a blob. You want to walk around looking as close to a statue as you can. If you're focused on the vanity aspects, this is about aesthetics. If you were heavy and you lost weight and now you can kind of see yourself, now you want to build upon what you see. And there are different ways to go about this, and I'm going to explain. Just let me roll through my story here. So once I hit that turning point and I started to see myself, I started to realize that the consistency in the way that I trained and the consistency in how high of a quality my diet was going to yield me better results. I started to learn that I could still put on muscle mass without eating to weigh a lot, because that actually has nothing to do with it. Putting on muscle mass is about stimulating hypertrophy. Putting on muscle mass is about focusing on getting stronger. Putting on muscle mass is about forcing your body to adapt to the increase in weight that you're using to put on muscle. This is what it's about. It's not about, oh, I just need to eat as much as I can, because the more weight I put on, the more muscle I put on. That's bullshit. As a matter of fact, all you really need to be in terms of a calorie surplus is 200 to 300 calories, and that's more than enough to give your body enough of a boost in terms of calories to put on some sufficient muscle mass without totally losing your condition and feeling and looking like a mess. You don't need to do that. So as I focused more on the education aspect of things, I learned more about the way that I ate, about how the way that I ate affected my body, about how I did better with a diet higher in carbs as opposed to a diet higher in fat. I just learned all the ways in which my body performed best. And this is something that everybody has to go through. I could give you a plan to follow, and it would work to some extent, but you have to learn the way that your body works, especially if you've never done it before. And there's consistency in this as well. The underlying theme of this video is consistency, and I'm sure you're catching on to that at this point. There were certain books that I read that really didn't do me much justice, but at the time I thought they did. You know, like the Arnold Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, where a lot of the information in that book, especially if you're up on the research nowadays, it was all complete, not all of it, but most of it was completely wrong. You know, Arnold was a genetic freak. You know, there were other things that went into his physique that I don't need to mention, but he was just a genetic outlier. So a lot of the things that he did worked for him, but wouldn't work for most other people. Especially training 2.5 or 3 hours a day. Don't do that. I used to do that too. Don't do that. So what I'm piecing together is that there were different pivot points throughout my training career, so to speak. The first part is you have to start. And I was eager to start, so that wasn't an issue for me. The second part was you need to actually learn what it is that you're doing and build skills around what you're doing in terms of training. I was really into that, and I was taught by people that were really high level, so I didn't have a problem with that either. I established good fundamental forms and techniques and understanding the importance of focusing on the eccentric, the negative portion of the movement. I learned all this from the very beginning, so I was good when it came to that. But the rest of it, in terms of diet, in terms of understanding what diet actually is, being how high quality you eat and not just deprivation, understanding the importance of recovery, understanding the importance of staying away from overtraining, not training 2-3 times a day, 2-3 hours a day. I did all this, don't do that. There's consistency in all of this. And then when you finally get it all in order and you know what you're doing, you need to string all of that together consistently. And if you're lucky enough to learn from somebody that knows exactly what they're doing from the beginning, you can really skip a lot of the time that I wasted along the way. And here we are 17 years later, and I still do it because I was able to be consistent. And here's really where the magic, here's really where this video really starts to make sense. In that if there's anything you ever want to do, health and wellness, fitness, dieting, you want to lose weight, you want to build a business, you want to get better within your relationships, whatever you want to do, consistency is going to be the fundamental foundation of the way that you do all of this. And consistency is best applied and easiest applied through habit building. You have to build habits. They're kind of one and the same. Because the quicker you're able to build habits around something you're doing, the easier it is to be consistent. And the more you're consistent with whatever you're doing, the easier it is to build habits. And once you do both, you find yourself in a place where you do things without even thinking about it. And that is really how longevity comes into play. Because you got to think about it, if you really wanted to do something for a long period of time, 5, 10, 20 years, if you had to think about it before you did it, every time you did it, you would almost certainly fail. You got to get it so you just do it, and there's no thought that goes into it. And that's the magic of consistent and or habit building, or vice versa. You can put them in whatever order you want to. So here are some tips that I want to give you guys that you can utilize in your own journeys, in your own lives, for anything in particular, especially when it comes to fitness, to stay consistent. The first thing is you just need to start. Just start. Think about it for, I don't know, a minute. If it's something you've thought about 2 or 3 times, it means you probably want to do it. So just start. It's not going to be perfect. As a matter of fact, it might be a complete shit show. It might be. But the fact that you started is 90% of the battle. Now you just have to maintain that. Okay, so you started. You might not know exactly what you're doing, but you know you have interest in doing it, or at least you have interest in the results of what you're doing might provide you with. So you're doing it. You begin the training. You're not too great with your form, tempo, and technique. Find a couple of YouTube videos where somebody's teaching how to bench press. If you find 3 or 4 YouTube videos that are telling you the same exact thing in the same exact way, I would probably just roll with that, right? Emulate people that you love and respect in the industry, not for how they look, but for how they train, that have really solid form and technique, and practice that. It's going to take you a little while, but you will learn. Start to do that. Start to get better with your form, your tempo, your technique, focusing in on the negatives. Get your skills in regards to your training up to par. Then you want to focus on the way that you eat. Don't make the same mistake that I made in the beginning. You want to make sure that you're eating high quality foods from the beginning. And listen, you don't have to eat clean 100% of the time. I typically do, or at least most of the time, but you don't need that to achieve really phenomenal results. 80-20 is consistent enough to yield you tremendous benefits. Okay? So be consistent with your practice in the gym until it becomes second nature. Be consistent with the effort you apply to your training, as it is going to drastically increase your results. Be consistent with adhering to a high quality diet, even if they're not the same foods every day, although there are benefits to that. Just focus on eating well, lean meats, high quality steak, chicken, fish, if you like it, oats, complex carbs, yams, rice, Greek yogurt, all this kind of stuff. High quality protein powders. Consistently stick to a high quality diet. Stay away from the fast food shit, the McDonald's, Burger King, Nathan's, White Castle, whatever. You can eat it if you want, but I strongly suggest that you don't if health is important to you. Lastly, and this is really not last, this should be first, sleep, recover. Do not train 3 hours a day. You can fit a very intense workout into 45 minutes to 1 hour. If you really train intensely and you know what you're doing and your form, technique, and tempo are dialed in, you do not need more than that. You're going to realize that more volume in the beginning is normal because you're learning, but after you got that stuff down packed, you are not going to be training for hours at a time because you simply won't be capable of it. Trust me. Sleep, 8 hours a night, focus on that. Recover. That is how you grow. You do not develop through training. You develop through sleep. You develop through rest. You develop through eating well, sleeping deeply, and training intensely. Then you repeat. That's the circle in which fitness takes place to see results. That's it. This is not rocket science. Lastly, and I want to end with this, I want to talk about setbacks. I want to speak to you about what happens when you hit a plateau. What happens when you get to a place where you don't really feel like training. When you're not really able to measure your results in any meaningful way, so you think nothing is happening. When I train my clients, I often go through these type of things with them because they expect to see things every single day and every single week. And at first you might be able to notice things every day, every week, every other week. But as time goes on, the returns diminish, but that does not mean that things are not happening. You have to shrink the window as you become more experienced. You got to focus on small wins. You were pressing 100s on flat bench for 5 weeks in a row for 6 reps and you finally got a 7th rep. That's huge because that means now you're in the position to go up to 105 pounds and try to get 5 or 6 reps. And the process continues. You repeat. If you put 5 more pounds onto your deadlift after being stuck at 315 and now you're deadlifting 320, that's a huge win. It means progress. Small incremental gains. If you see, people don't really measure their arms anymore, I would assume. I don't anyway. But if you were stuck at 16 inches and you see 16th and 1/16th of an inch. It's progress. Learn to enjoy the process. Remember, if you get yourself into shape, you are well within the 1% of the population of the world that gets to look like that. People cannot buy that. If you are someone that is fit and you are in shape, you have to know that you earned that. You cannot buy that shit. You are top 1%. Don't ever forget that. Pat yourself on the back, because that is a hell of an accomplishment. You do not understand how many people admire you for working that hard, for looking the way that you do, because it shows that you can dedicate yourself to a cause. It shows that you can be consistent for many days, months, weeks, years at a time. It shows delayed gratification. On another note, this is what people look when they hire in businesses. These same characteristics. You could take these characteristics and move them on to anything else in life, and it's a recipe for success. So if you think you're plateaued, remind yourself to be patient. Rome wasn't built in a day. If you find that you're not getting any stronger, keep pushing. Your body will break through at some point if you continue to put max effort. If you're tired of eating clean and it's just driving you insane, it's okay to have a cheat meal. It's not going to kill you. As a matter of fact, psychologically, it can be very beneficial. Just don't make it a habit. Sleep, quality of diet, training, in that order. You repeat that over and over again, you're going to be within the top 1% before you know it. If there's anybody out there that found this video helpful, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know where you're at in your fitness journey. Share the video if you think it's worth it, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.